everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are back for another week. I am so excited for this week's conversation. It was such a good conversation. It ended up being an hour long. And so with that being said, this is going to be actually put out in 2 parts. So you're watching part 1. How exciting. So part 1 is coming out today. That's what you're watching now. Part 2 will come out next week. And man, the conversation we had about this topic was excellent. It was such a good topic. We had Mike Conn come in and be a guest on the show or the episode, however you want to put it. And we talked about hope. And Mike is a hope ambassador in the community of Duncan. He does so much stuff for the community, and he is such a great guy. And he brought a really good insight into finding hope and having hope and what even is hope, the science of hope. And it was such a good conversation. Pastor David also joined us as well. And, when you get them two together, they can talk a long time, but that's okay. It was a really good conversation. We sat here and just talked. I felt like I was just sitting in the living room with 2 men of God that just brought a whole lot of insight to me. I've had a hard time these past few years, and I feel like I've lost some hope. And just this conversation we had, I felt so much more hopeful in the Lord, and just, man, I felt so much better after having listened to these conversations we were having. So I really, really hope that you will sit down and listen to this video and just take note of the hope in this world. We're in such a time that we need hope. We need more hope in our lives, in our schools, we need hope everywhere. We're in such a dark time in a lot of things, but we have hope. We have hope in Jesus, and when we turn to Him, we are filled with hope, and hope is something that you can hold on to. And I think this conversation that we had is so needed for this time, and I cannot wait for you to see it. Make sure you like and subscribe, and comment your questions, comment your ideas, and comment your just contribute into the conversation today. If you have something that pops into your head, like, oh, I need to share that, type it in our comments, and we'll read that, and we will ponder on it. And somebody else may need that also. And if you have any anonymous questions, make sure you go into our link in the description box to fill out that Google form that is an anonymous way that you can ask questions. And yeah, I'm so excited for you guys to see it. I cannot wait. And I guess I will just stop talking now and let you get to watch the video. So our topic today is hope. So before we start having a conversation about hope, I have the definition of hope, because I wanted to bring out, like, what even is hope? What are we talking about when we talk about hope? So according to Dr. Google, it's a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. It's a feeling of trust, or to want something to happen or be the case. And so I also looked up the biblical definition of hope, and it's to trust in, wait for, look for, or desire something or someone, and having a foundation of faith in God. So after looking over that definition, I kind of made the connection of, like, how hope and faith kind of coincide. So I wanted to ask y'all what y'all thought about how faith and hope coincide, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, that's so multi-layered. I love the idea of hope and what that looks like. I've heard that my whole life. My dad wasn't a pastor, but I sang my first song in church when I was 6, and I've been around the church my whole life. Got my first church job when I was 19, and so that we've thrown that around, that faith, hope, and love. We throw that around a lot, which is great. I'm not saying we shouldn't throw it around. Mm-hmm. I'm saying I love what you did about bringing common definitions. I think that's one of the best places to start any conversation, is with common ground. Mm-hmm. Because hope to you, and hope to me, and hope to you might be apples and green and music or whatever, something that doesn't really fit. So I think for me, hope it's difficult to bring something that's so abstract to everybody, because they all process it, they intake it a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And so I think the more common ground we can have with that, and then even to say, well, I believe hope is this, and here's why. I mean, I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do, and to be ambassadors of Christ or ambassadors of hope. It's, to me, that's, as the hands and feet of Jesus, and the voice and the mouth and all that. Like, I think, my job is to try to take this message of hope to people in a way that they can understand it, and not only understand it, but then apply it. Yep. And that's not just like a tell me your truth kind of a thing, because that can be everybody's own definition. But I do think there's high value in not going into it with a preconceived idea of where I want the conversation to go, but when I say, hey, Addie, tell me about the hope that you have, and then take a drink of water and then let you talk.
Yeah.
Because my tendency is to say, hey, Addie, tell me about your hope. Oh, and then whenever you take a breath, I jump in and say, and I think. Yeah. And then you don't feel heard, and then you haven't connected with me. So I'm going to take a drink of water and let you talk about it.
To me, when you talk about faith and hope, I mean, it's the basis of our Christian faith. I mean, it's really, we begin with faith. I believe in God. I believe that He sent His Son to die on a cross for us, and He went to a grave and come out of that grave to give us victory over death, hell, and sin in our life. And so those things, when we start thinking about that, believing, having faith is that beginning of everything. But hope is the thing that brings the future part of that. If we can now have and see beyond just today that there's a hope in Christ. And so when we talk about that, Hebrews 11:1, and I hope I don't misquote this. This is terrible from a pastor to do that. But faith is the substance of things hoped for. So we start thinking about that, it's the substance. Hope is the substance of, faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. So it really just brings that pathway of seeing things. We believe, but now we hope. We have these things that we're connecting those two dots with that, and hope is powerful. Though it is so powerful when you start thinking, I can see in my mind's eye where I want to go, and having that hope to get there is really powerful, because that's what drives. It's kind of the driving force. It's like the road that you can see, the road map in your mind that you can see. Okay, this is how I can get there. And I think that's where a lot of people fail. I wouldn't say fail. That's not probably the correct word in saying it, but just don't have success in things, is because they can't see that hope. And I think as a hope ambassador, and you're really well at this, Mike, I think you let people see that road. You help people to see that road. To how they can get to certain things in their life, and that's really what hope is to me. In that. So
sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Well, and I think when hope is present, you can see it, but even more evident when it's absent, you can see it. And then I think for us as people who have hope, we know there's an unlimited supply of the hope that exists for us. And we have a history of walking with God. We have a history of having that hope. But to see someone whose hope is flickering at best or has gone away, then it's got to be something. I think it's got to be something more tangible. And how you're not just saying, "Hey, you need to get some hope. Here's a Bible. Right. Here's some Jesus. Here's a church you need to go." Yeah. That's not helpful. Yeah. To someone who doesn't have hope, it's like, man, you need to get better so you can get hope. So there's this movement called the Science of Hope, and there's this great book by Dr. Chan Hellman. He's a professor at OU, and it's a really, when especially when you talk to people who love Jesus and you say the science of hope, you get this arms crossed, angry eyebrows. What are you talking about? Science of hope. Yeah. Like, what is that even about? Yeah. And we overcomplicate it. And I think the thing that I love about the Science of Hope, it's not just about the book. Now they're between 2,500 and 3,000 published studies about the science of hope. And the reason why that's important to we people who follow Jesus and say we love Jesus is their definition of hope in that book, in that movement, is that tomorrow can be better than today, and I have a role to play in it.
Yes.
It's essentially empowering them. And who's them? Everyone. I mean, in my darkest moments, where I would just like to watch Sports Center in the dark and drink chocolate milk with my dog Patches, and I don't need to people anymore. Like, you know how that works. Like I don't need someone to say, "Oh, you just need to go pray about it." That's not helpful to me.
Right.
It's not. And because what that sound, and I realize as a follower of Jesus for a long time, not always good at it, but I've said stuff like that to people so many times, and not in a condescending way, but in a way, well, I mean, it feels like you're just kind of patting them on the head. Well, you need to go get some hope, go to the hope store and go get you some hope. Yeah. And that seems so far out of reach. And when I present it that way, it's like, hey, I could help you get some hope, but I ain't got time for it. Yeah. And that's what I love about this, is to say, no matter who you are and where you are, you have a role. Your tomorrow can be better than today or better than your past, and you have a role to play in it. And as people who love Jesus, the role is to rely on Jesus. Mm-hmm. And we can help people get to that point. Listen, you said we have 45 minutes per answer. I'm sure that was in the contract or the email you sent.
Prayer is a great place to start.
Absolutely.
with hope. But we have to put feet to our prayer. Faith without works is dead. So we have to really put some feet to that. And prayer, sometimes through prayer, will give us that time to get direction from the Lord, and just being quiet. And sometimes just getting in a quiet place will allow us to clarify and define some things too, in that and through prayer. And so through that, yes, that starts that process of putting things together. But I think a lot of people need help even putting things together. Like, what's my next step? What's my next goal that I can do to accomplish or to build some hope in that? And that goes along with the science of hope too. I've read that book as well, great book. And they do a great job of defining and helping people to understand what hope is. And it's just really putting some steps together to get to a place where you want to go in life, and that will bring hope when you start having a clearer vision of where I'm going to go. And a lot of times, just saying, "Hey, go pray," like you said, is very difficult to put some legs to things. Sometimes they need to talk to someone and say, "Hey, I can't see this. I can't see beyond tomorrow. I can't see beyond these things that's going on in my life because it seems so destructive," or whatever past or whatever trauma they've had in their life in the past. They may not can see beyond that, and so it's up to us many times to maybe help bring that hope to people.
Yeah. And with that idea, it's a big movement in Stevens and Jefferson County now with the science of hope. A group, they're developing Hope Navigators, which I'm, honored and excited to be one of that first group of folks. And the idea is to be able to have, back to your original common ground, for us to be able to have common ground to work with the hospitals, to work with nonprofits, to work with, certainly with a faith-based group where we can have this opportunity, we the church can have this opportunity to sit at the table and have conversations about things that we have an expertise in, where people are saying, how do you get that hope? Not only how do you get it, but how do you transfer it? Yeah. And that's a great opportunity that with Kim Whaley and with the group, the folks it's not necessarily an initiative through the hospital, but it's a fantastic opportunity to bring more people to having to the table, to have conversations about things that are tangible and that really, in some cases, I feel like we, the church, haven't been invited to some of those conversations before because they're like, "Oh, you're just going to pray and yell Jesus stuff at us," and because that's what we've shown them in the past. But I think this is an opportunity to have a conversation with someone, again, back to someone like the woman at the well, who's not sure what her next step would be or why you would even be taking the time to talk to me. And then instead of condemning or pointing out all of the insecurities they may have, we're like, hey, no, here's some handles on hope. And I think that's a big thing.
Yes, that's a great way to put the handles. That's what people need, is handles to grab a hold of at times to know where to go.